This morning, we have Mark Anthony Williams. He will be talking to us on the topic, compliance doesn't always equate to results. And you learn how to go beyond regulatory compliance for safety management, learn to target human behavior and motivate safe decisions, and develop systems for assessing your safety culture and collecting the information you need to be successful. Mark is an EHS and risk management professional specializing in compliance, program development, training, and auditing. He has his own company where he has delivered compliance solutions and implemented management systems for various organizations. He has a proven track record of managing recordable injury risks through effective, sustainable mitigation methods. I, for one, am looking forward to hearing about the methods he recommends and how I can use those tools at my own company. Mr. Mark Anthony Williams.
I'm gonna just speak from here. 2 questions before we begin. Does everybody here like prizes? Show of hands real quick.
Prizes?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Some people like, this is a surprise, and like surprises, anxiety, you never know. Does everybody here like chocolate?
Do? Yes.
Does anybody not like chocolate? Oh, this is gonna be so awkward. Oh my gosh. Because I didn't bring any caramel or anything like that. Right. So my name is Mark Anthony Williams. You'll notice on my first cover slide, what does this symbol mean right here? It's not equal, right? What do you guys think compliance is?
Basics. Following regulations.
Following regulations? Okay. All right. Do you think that compliance is the end-all be-all? Is it perfect?
No.
It's not perfect, right?
Right.
Do you think that we update compliance requirements often enough to meet what we see in the field in the industries as they grow? Probably not?
Sometimes we get too ruly. We make too many rules, and I know they're put in place typically because someone's been injured or killed or whatever, but,
Might have other ulterior motives or reasons.
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you can be overruled, sometimes.
Okay. This is like how we don't have an ergonomic standard and we never will. Is that like that? Is that that one? Yeah, okay. All right, cool. So I'm not gonna talk too much about myself. I had a slide here about myself, but Vincent did a great job, so I'm gonna leave this alone. Everyone in this room who is over 35 probably has more experience than me. But I like to think of it this way. There are 2,080 hours in a year, and I've been doing this for 7 years. So if I do a little bit of math, I end up with about 5 figures worth in hours of experience. And I think that's pretty impressive if I was like a pilot or something, right? So I'm just gonna put that out there. I also think that safety professionals, 1 year in the safety field is like 7 in dog years, right? So if you wanna do it like that as well, I think I'm still pretty, seasoned so far, right? Stormy seas, seasoned sailors. I'm still surviving, I'm thriving, I haven't been kicked out yet, I'm not in jail, I've been fined, nothing like that, no lawsuits, nothing like that, right? So I'm just gonna skip this as well. In today's environment, regulations are a necessary component, to keep us out of trouble. But I think there's a fine line between what we do on paper and what we do in real life, right? A lot of people, companies, employers, they think about checking the box first, and they think that once we check the box, we satisfy that requirement. There's nothing else that needs to be done. Okay, we're good. Just move on to the next thing, back to production, ship, product, right? And that's not necessarily true or helpful in the long term. So my objectives today are to highlight the shortcomings of predominantly compliance-based approaches, to demonstrate the importance of proactive measures in establishing sustainable processes for safety management, and to offer some practical suggestions for moving beyond compliance. And this is an exchange, right? I want everybody here to feel very comfortable in sharing their best practices from whatever plant or company or site they work at. We all work in safety, and we can all take something away from each other, is what I believe, right? Before we go any further, everybody here has a phone or a tablet? No judgment if you don't, it's cool, I get it. Maybe you have used television or something, I don't know, write a letter. Just take a picture of that real quick. You can access the activity sheet as well as a copy of this presentation, right? So if you want to share it with anybody else or review it later or follow along on your phone, you can do that. The activity sheet has some questions we're going to go over, and this is why I asked you if you like prizes and chocolate, right? Because incentivization, right? Let's leave this for a second. Let's count to 5, or down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Oh, okay, that's cool. Are we good? We good? Everybody got this? Okay, all right, that'll work. So objective 1, compliance is necessary, but it is not sufficient. This was said by some wise guy whose name I can't remember many years ago. Like I first said, anyone over the age of 35 in here, I was born in 91, right? Probably has way more experience than me. So I'm not gonna be like way back in the day when I started safety, but I am gonna say way back in the day when I started safety, right? 7 odd years ago, or 49 years in dog years, right? I was super excited. I was, super stoked. My first job was at Amazon as a EHS specialist. And I got the opportunity to go to different Amazon facilities and help implement programs. They had a couple black sites, which are temporary sites you put up to increase their capacity during peak seasons. So I got involved in as many things as I could. I was kind of a yes man. You tell me what the problem was, where you want me to go. I was like a soldier, I go do it, right? I was very green behind the ears, right? Obviously, that's why I was like, yes, yes, yes. So I started wondering, okay, I love this job, love the people, how do I not get fired, right? And I thought compliance was kind of the end all be all at first. Okay, so here's what I came up with. The three main goals of a safety professional, and this is what I used to think, I no longer think this, right? So please don't chastise me too much, was documented compliance, emergency preparedness and injury response, and injury performance and reduction, right? And my logic behind that, right, was that if you had documented compliance, if something were to happen, your ducks in a row, you did your due diligence, God, things happen, right? My second thing was if an emergency were to happen and you weren't prepared for, sudden emergencies, then you'd probably get in some trouble. Why weren't you ready for the fire? Why didn't you know where the exits were? How to use the fire extinguishers, that kind of stuff. And then the third one probably came, say about 1.5 years in, injury results, injury performance. You could have the best system ever on paper, but if it's not showing the results that upper management is looking for, they're gonna look at you a little funny. Have you all ever run into that? You came in here and you said, oh, TRIR was 4.0, now it's a 2.5, we're doing great. And the CFO was like, yeah, but our premiums just went up, we have all these open claims, we're spending way more money. So he's not a happy camper, and then the ops guy's looking at you like, fix it, help me, right? It started making me realize that compliance really is just the bare minimum, right? We need more. But there are a couple of good parts of compliance, right? I wouldn't say it's not necessary at all, it definitely is. It's more of a foundation, right? It kind of sets a baseline for what we expect everybody to do or will do, right? And if we didn't have a baseline, we wouldn't have rules of engagement. It would be kind of hard to say what right looks like. How do we hold people accountable? Or people who don't even have any knowledge of safety or how to keep people safe or what's required, how would we give them a starting point, so to speak, right? So compliance, OSHA, the EPA, DOT, all of these rules, and to his point, some of them are a little sticky or seem a little trivial, they all kind of serve a purpose, right? They all give everybody a fair playing ground, right, so to speak. Now, the problem is, of course, is that it's just the beginning, right? So I work for some companies that somehow think once they're in compliance, that's it, pack up, we're good to go, let's resume the show. They don't realize that safety is an ongoing, continuous process, right? Once their policies are done, they have proof that each of the components of the CFR for each policy are implemented. And sometimes the proof is, kind of mediocre, right? Like everyone signed off on the lockout, tagout, authorized training, but half the class is Hispanic and don't speak English.
Yeah.
And we didn't account for that. We didn't test their competency. We gave them a lock and a tag. Say, here you go, right? And they're like, oh, okay, cool, free stuff from work. We'll never use this, I have no idea what to do with it, right? And then 6 months later, someone gets their hand crushed or a finger pinched because the machine wasn't locked out properly. And you're like, well, why didn't you lock it out? Lock it out with what? The lock and the tag that we gave you. Oh, that's what that's for. Oh, I had no idea, I didn't know. You didn't tell me that, right? So on paper, we can be definitely compliant, but when something happens and things hit the fan, that's really when the litmus test kind of comes around, right? One size doesn't fit all. Every company is different, right? OSHA has obviously different chapters. We have general industry, we have construction, maritime, agriculture, and to some extent, it does allow us a little bit of customization and specification in terms of applicability, right? But it's still very, very broad. It's still very, very broad. And it's very hard sometimes for a company to determine what the applicability is. What are they required to specifically do, right? And that's kind of what gives us a job, yay, but it also gives us a lot of work because we're only human. There's some things that we might miss, right? If we're only going from a compliance standpoint, that means that we may also miss a lot of hazards and risks that are going to affect the people day over day, right? Now, I sat in this session yesterday, and the speakers made a very good point, right? They said that a lot of times we focus on all of the hazards instead of the ones that are really high risk, right? So we try to give everything its fair share of attention, but if one thing is more likely to happen than another, right, and more frequently, then we should probably focus on the things that are more likely to happen than the things that are not. Is that fair to say? Yeah? Okay. So here's some cautionary tales. In 2005, Texas City refinery had 15 fatalities and injured over 170 others. The explosion was caused by a release of flammable vapor from a blowdown stack, which ignited and caused a series of explosions. It sounds like a Michael Bay film. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration found that the refinery had failed to adequately implement process safety management requirements, including hazard analysis, equipment maintenance, and operator training. So when I go online and look at this incident, right, because there's a lot of back and forth, they went to court quite a bit, they allege that they had everything on paper. That on paper, they were fine. They had a PSM program, they did a hazard analysis, people were trained, whole 9 yards. Was that really enough if something like this could still happen? Probably not, right? There was a gap somewhere. And if they had maybe a little bit more engagement or cared a little bit more, they might have cared to keep looking, keep getting better, and probably found that gap before this happened. Here's another one. It's talking about a person, a worker died in 2015 at the Wisconsin paper mill while cleaning a paper machine dryer. It was a confined space. OSHA found that the employer had failed to adequately train workers on the hazards of confined spaces and to implement adequate procedures for safe entry, right? So we have a lockout target issue and a confined space issue. Those are probably two of the highest hazard programs you can have at your site. Do you guys agree? Does everybody here have any experience with lockout tagout confined space? Yeah? Do you guys dread rescue protocols? Do you guys often worry that even though I have this on paper, I've sent it to the fire department, everyone on paper seems, pretty competent, maybe have a third-party rescue team. What if there's a miss? What if there's a gap? Do you guys ever worry about that? How quickly things can go wrong, right? So just because we're compliant on paper doesn't necessarily mean that we are completely secured and prepared. Things can still happen, and that's why we have to remain vigilant, right? Objective 2, proactive measures are essential, said by a wiser guy. I've met a lot of people, man. So prevention versus cure. A proactive approach to AHS management can bring a lot of benefits. Instead of us dealing with just treating an injury, submitting a workers' comp case, doing an investigation, and fixing whatever caused it after RCA after the fact, if we were proactively looking for hazards, we would probably have found whatever hurt that person, right? Or even better, someone else was probably exposed to that hazard before that person who got hurt. And they just said nothing or didn't think it was important, right? So a couple takeaways here. One, if you're the safety person for your facility, you can only be in one place at once. Does that scare anybody? Does that scare anybody? Just a little bit? You can only be in one place at once. You heard what Camille said downstairs at the presentation?
Yeah.
She was literally collecting an award hundreds of miles away, and that was the day that there was a reportable injury or lost time. And her boss said, what? Well, this happened because you weren't here, right? As if she's a superhero, right? Now, here's my response to this, right? If we had better proactive approaches, including engagements, we'd have more eyes looking for these hazards. We'd have a better awareness of what the hazards of each role were. And people would have interest, a self-interest of saying, hey, if I experience something, I don't want the other guy to experience it. And if I was lucky enough not to get hurt, it's my responsibility to report it and make sure that something's done about this. Like, I need to drive management to take care of this. Now, if people don't think that management cares, are the employees gonna care? Probably not, yeah? If I don't think my company cares, am I just gonna come and collect a check? Yeah, okay. So, couple proactive measures, and these are just some ideas. You're probably doing some of these already, right? Improve hazard identification, right? A proactive approach to safety management involves actively seeking out hazards and risks in the workplace rather than waiting for the accidents to occur. Now, what I will probably add to this is that we need to get everybody involved in this hazard awareness process. This can't just be the safety person. It can't just be, I did a job hazard assessment once a year for each role. I put it down on a piece of paper, and then I made a couple adjustments and walked off, right? No, this has to be a continuous process. Everybody has to be involved. Everybody needs to be trained. Everybody needs to see the importance of it. And we need to recognize when people do the right thing. Better risk assessments. We should be continuously adjusting what we're looking for to be a little bit more granular and get a little bit better. The same job hazard assessments I did last year may not be adequate this year. What if the processes changed, the operations expanded, the building had an expansion, whatever have it be? Maybe it's 2 buildings now. Maybe it's a higher head count. Maybe they've adjusted a certain role a little bit now, he's exposed to more chemicals. I should not just be thinking, hey, I'm gonna do the bare minimum, this is my job hazard assessment form. I'm not trying to update anything on the template itself. Suggestions? Has anyone ever run into this before? This is where you reply.
Yes,
Yes? Tell me about it, what happened?
new machinery, new machines added in and they might be wired or plumbed differently.
Okay. Did someone get hurt?
Yeah, they killed.
Oh jeez. Did you have to respond to it?
Yes.
What was that like? Therapy?
Well, in my 30-something years of career, I've had probably a dozen different fatalities in different places. But yeah, this was in a tire manufacturing plant.
Mm-hmm.
The machine was called a TUO, which is a tire unified optimizer for, the little hairs that are on the tires when it comes out of the mold. This is a machine that trims them off and makes the tire
Okay.
go around. 12 machines in a line.
Mm-hmm.
Some machines had been added in after the fact. The second machine was not wired and plumbed like the first machine. He locked it out like he locked out the first machine.
Mm-hmm.
He climbed in the machine and was trapped and crushed. So yeah, you have to keep looking at the way things are different, the way things have changed. Identical machine, same plant,
Mm-hmm.
added in a different year, obviously by probably a different contractor, and it was wired and plumbed differently. And so the lockout, tagout points were not the same as the machine he had just worked on half an hour before that. So, you have to do your risk assessment, you have to look, and then, the guys have to understand that things might be different on number 2 machine than number 1 machine.
That's a good point. Do you prefer a Kit Kat or Reese's?
Reese's.
Reese's? Okay. Can you play catch?
Okay.
I don't want you to have an injury.
No.
Okay, all right. Cool. I suck. I'm sorry. My game was like way off. You know what's crazy? I had basic last year. You would think my eyesight would be better. It's not. It's not. The last point on here, greater prevention mechanisms. Right? So in addition to preventing accidents and injuries before they occur, we have to hold people accountable to fixing what we find. That's kind of a sticking point, especially for like a maintenance team. They're kind of like, oh my gosh, all these people do is put in work orders. Every single day, they put in 5 more work orders. Don't they know I have other stuff to do to keep this plant running? Have you guys had those conversations before? Have you had to buy your maintenance manager lunch before? Has that ever happened? Have you ever had a sweet talking? Yeah, you'd be like, hey, Rob, how you doing today? I bought you flowers. Right? True story, right? In some instances, I've gone as far to go to Home Depot, get the paint and the striping machine, and do some projects myself. Yeah, get a team and do it myself. Now, it says 2 examples. One, I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty on any level. You tell me what we need to do, like I said, I'm gonna do it, right? If I'm relying on you to do it, I'm gonna hold you accountable to get this done, especially if there's a hazard that needs to be mitigated. Because the longer you take to get this done, that hazard is existing, and the longer a chance someone is gonna get hurt by it, right? So that's gonna be on my mind, and that needs to be tracked for a whole bunch of reasons, including negligence. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So theory and action, who do we have first? GE has implemented, you guys know who GE is, right? Okay. They've implemented proactive measures to improve its AHS performance. The company has implemented a program called Eco-Imagination. Isn't that fancy?
Yeah.
It includes a focus on sustainability and AHS performance. It's helped the company reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, improve energy efficiency, and reduce waste. It's also implemented a comprehensive AHS risk management system as a part of it that includes regular risk assessments and hazard identification, right? That's just one example. So they've started making their own gold standard that goes beyond the bare compliance requirements from, say, OSHA and the EPA, right? And that's what they hold their company to. It probably helps with their brand reputation, recognition. It helps with the fact that they're holding themselves morally responsible for their impact on the planet. And they're showing that they care. They're putting their money where their mouth is. Now, I'll say something at the end after we address all of these, right? Alcoa, you guys know about Alcoa? I know about Alcoa way back in the day when I was back in Trinidad. Aluminum smelter plants. That's where everybody worked, right? There's not a lot of jobs back there. So Alcoa, oh my gosh, yeah, let's go get a job, let's go, right? They have a long-standing commitment to safety. They've implemented numerous proactive measures. And they have a program called EHS at Alcoa, focuses on proactive hazard identification, risk assessment, and prevention. The program has resulted in a significant reduction in injuries, illnesses, and environmental incidents over the years. And the third example here is DuPont. Does anybody have anything to say about DuPont? Did anybody notice a pattern with the companies I picked? Anybody notice that yet? Okay. A global chemicals company has a strong commitment to safety and has implemented numerous proactive measures to improve its performance. For example, the company has implemented something called the DuPont Integrated Safety Management System. Includes a focus on proactive hazard identification, risk assessment, and prevention. It's helped the company reduce its injuries and illness rates and improve its overall EHS performance. Now, what I will say again, no company is perfect. And the point I'm trying to make here is that I'm applauding that at least they're trying to raise the bar internally at their own organizations. Now, unfortunately, most times, efforts like this, with the investment it takes, happens after something really, really catastrophic has occurred, right? I'm not going to go into specifics on any of these, but anybody who's had over 30 years experience in the back there probably read the names and said, wait a second, I see a pattern, right? And that's specifically why I picked these companies. I could have picked anybody, right? Just, by the way, you said 31 years? Yeah? Let's multiply that by 7 real quick. You're like a centurion.
I'm old, okay.
You're a centurion. Does anybody have a beat?
I like Reese's Pieces.
Does anybody have a beat? Should you be eating that? Like, is your wife gonna call me later or tell me you cheated on your diet or something?
My doctor might.
Okay, all right. Don't take my number down. Objective 3, moving beyond compliance. The wisest guy. So, like we've said, remember how we started? Shoot.
On your, on the DuPont, I've used the DuPont stop program before and had some very good successes with it.
That's good.
Has anybody else had success with that?
You
I
have,
remember, I worked in the chemical industry for a number of years, and DuPont was always one of the companies that seemed to have the most progressive programs that we all looked at.
that's awesome.
And then I actually got a consultant for DuPont. I lived in Maryland for a while, of course, a Delaware company, and I went to some of the plants, and it's very impressive.
That's awesome.
At the same time, because they're a big name, when something goes wrong, they make the news.
Right. So heavies ahead of ways of crime.
But overall, they were always considered within the chemical industry, probably the most progressive.
Progressive. That's good. Looks like a good example.
Yeah, the stopper.
Has anybody else used a DuPont stop?
It's kind of pricey, but it fits. You know, I wasn't even in the chemical plant when I was using it. I was in a plastic thermoformer.
Okay.
But but you know, it really helped.
But that's really impressive when you think it's a chemical company, but one of their products is their safety program.
Yeah.
That is true. That's a good point. And like I was saying earlier, right? It's a pity that a lot of these innovations or these investments or focuses often happen after there's some sort of catastrophe, right? But it's almost like a silver lining, because they could keep doing the same thing that they were doing for years, or say, well, you know, that's not important, and then the same things keep happening. You have the same negligence, the same hazards, people keep getting hurt. But instead, they're learning from their mistakes, they're making adjustments, and they're doing what's necessary to keep their people safe over time. Right? And that's what all of us are kind of here for. That's what safety is about. Do you prefer Hershey's or Snickers? Hershey's. I'm just gonna deliver this. Learn my lesson about throwing.
Say both of us a lot of embarrassment.
There you go. This is being recorded, so I can't have people think what's wrong with their shoulder or something, right? So like we were saying, the first slide, do you remember that equal sign?
Yes.
What did it say? Compliance is not equates to results. Yeah? Another equal sign says compliance is equal to bare minimum. Okay. So moving beyond compliance could definitely be challenging, right? I could definitely see, if I was playing devil's advocate, why a company looking at costs and looking at resources says, okay, define or measure what is good, what is required, so we know how much resources to put into it. To me, that's pretty logical, right? On paper, that probably works great for a P&L or a budget.